Good morning, dear students. Today we are going to start our poem, Kubla Khan, or A Vision in a Dream, a fragment, which is written by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. You remember previously that we talked about romantic poets, and we said that William Wordsworth, who was a friend of Coleridge, was known to be a poet of nature, which means that he was mainly focused on nature as a main theme, as a teacher, as a guide to man. Now we see that Coleridge actually is that kind of poet who is more concerned or more focused on imagination. That's why we are going to see that in this poem we have a lot of imaginary places, imaginary descriptions, because the whole poem is a dream. It is a dream. So Kubla Khan, I guess most of you in the questions that you have answered, I read your answers, by the way, and I found that you have mentioned that Kubla Khan is a Mongol leader, and he's actually a real character. And also, most of you have answered the question how this poem was written. Coleridge actually was reading about this Mongol leader Kubla Khan in a book before falling asleep, because he was under the influence of opium. And opium, you know, is kind of a drug. Based on that dream, as he woke up, he started to write this poem, and eventually he came up with this poem. So let's go through this poem line by line. In Xanadu did Kubla Khan, so the place in which the dream takes place is called Xanadu, and this is an imaginary place. It is the place in which Kubla Khan is a king or the leader. It is the place that he rules. What did he do in this place? He ordered or decreed that a stately pleasure dome be created. Dome, you know, this is structure, the dome. It is a wide and majestic place in which we have different things placed in one area. So, as the name of this dome suggests, it is a pleasure dome. So we expect to find different kinds of pleasures, beautiful things, things which bring joy, happiness. The first thing that catches the attention of our speaker in this dome is Alf. Alf is a river, and notice here he describes this river as sacred. This is a sacred river, and the name actually is really significant here. Alf comes from, or it reminds us actually of alpha, and alpha is the first letter in the Greek alphabet. So here this river reminds us of the beginning of life, the beginning of things. So that's why this river gains this importance as a sacred, holy river. Now, how does this river move? Look at this. He says that this sacred river ran through caverns measureless to man. So this river goes through, in its course, it goes through caves. They are very wide, massive caves, to the extent that you can't find, or you cannot measure them. You can't find the end of these caves. They are measureless. Then it goes down to a sunless sea. We know usually that rivers, when they are running, they finally pour into sea. But here the sea is actually underground. So the river goes somewhere under the ground. It disappears underground in a sea which is down there. Now he goes on to describe what other things we see inside the dome. So twice 5 miles of fertile ground. What do we have also? We have a very wide area of fertile ground. Fertile ground means a ground that you can grow things, you can farm things. And it is a very wide area. You see, twice 5 miles means 10 miles. With walls and towers were girdled round. So as if this, let's say this dome, this very wide area is surrounded by walls and towers for the protection of these pleasures, of these beautiful things inside the dome. And there were gardens bright with sinuous rills, where blossomed many an incense-bearing tree. Till now, all the pleasures that we are seeing inside this dome are beauties of nature, things that are pleasant to see, things that are pleasant even to smell, incense-bearing. Incense is this beautiful substance that upon burning, it gives a very beautiful smell. And I guess in your handout you can see the meaning of this expression. And actually such incense, where do we find it usually? It is found in religious ceremonies. So as if here the smell of the incense can add even more to the value of this place, how beautiful, how mystical the place is. And here were forests, ancient as the hills, enfolding sunny spots of greenery. So the place seems to be really filled with natural things, forest, green areas, sunny spots, hills, rivers. Everything here seems to be really pleasant to watch and pleasant to smell. It is something very beautiful to enjoy. The senses enjoy this place. Now we see, here we see somehow the poem goes, if we are talking about the form of the poem, we will see that the poem has somehow different form here in this second stanza. So as if the poet has moved from one place to another, and in this case he moved from the inside of the dome of pleasure into the outside. So here, this stanza refers to the wild nature outside the dome. So what happens if the dome contains all these beautiful, enjoyable things? What about the outside? What do we find in the outside? In the outside, it seems our speaker here is really surprised when he says, but oh, that deep romantic chasm which slanted down the green hill athwart a sudden cover. So when he looks outside, he sees a chasm. Chasm is a very huge hole, let's say, in the ground. And it really surprises the speaker when he looks at it. And you see, because this is a dream, and in dream we don't expect to find logical things. Things always seem to be, or the, let's say, images come which are not necessarily related to each other. So here the dream takes our speaker into somewhere else outside the dome, a savage place. So what kind of place it is in the outside? It is not as beautiful and as let's say, as pleasant as the inside. It has some kind of contradictions. It is holy and enchanted at the same time. There is something magical and something mysterious about this place. Then here you see, as ever beneath a waning moon was haunted by women wailing for her demon lover. So here you see there is another image, another scene, since as I have told you, this is a dream, and in dreams usually you can't explain what exactly you are looking at or what are the scenes which come to you. So here, since the poet is describing a dream, the place is filled with weird and mystical scenes like this one, where a woman is crying over a demon lover. So here the description of a demon lover. So this is a place in which we can find demons, magic, unexplained, strange things. And from this chasm with ceaseless turmoil seething, as if this earth in fast thick pants were breathing. So the place is in a state of unrest. There is something which is struggling to come out of under the ground, from under the ground. A fountain here in this in these lines, he is talking about something which happened here. A fountain comes out of the chasm as if it was breathing quickly. So when he was looking at the ground, there was some kind of unrest, turmoil, as if the earth is breathing, breathing quickly, pants. And suddenly something comes out, water comes out. With water are huge fragments of rocks, like hails. You know, hails, when sometimes it is raining, we don't have drops of water, we have hails. In Arabic we call this الحالوب or barad أحيانا نسميه. Like hails, or like wheat which flies around when being hit with a flail. So here he makes two comparison between two things in order to make the image clear to us. So there is this fountain which suddenly came out of the ground, and it is filled with all these rocks and fragments. The fountain is actually the sacred river Alf, which came again. You remember in the first stanza, it goes down under the ground and then disappears, but it seems that it doesn't stop. It continues its course until it comes out in this place, out from this chasm in a form of a fountain, and then it continues its way. 5 miles meandering with a mazy motion through wood and dale the sacred river runs. So it seems here that the river runs through a continuous motion, going once again into the caves and then down to the sunless sea. You see, then reached the caverns measureless to man and sank in tumult to lifeless ocean. So again, here we see that this river is going through this continuous circular kind of motion. It goes again to the same place that it started from. And mid this tumult, Kubla heard from far. So where's our leader here, Kubla Khan? In the middle of this, suddenly he heard something. What are these things that he heard? He heard ancestral voices prophesying war. So Kubla hears voices which warn about a war. So the outside of the dome is not only savage, but also destructive. There are let's say magic, demon, war, destruction. It is a really rough place. It is not in any way similar to the inside of the pleasure dome, in which we can find all the beautiful and pleasant, joyful things. The shadow of the dome of pleasure floated midway on the waves. So if you are standing outside the dome of pleasure, you can notice that the dome of pleasure has a certain shadow, and this shadow is casting, or it can be seen over the waves. Here the waves, he's talking about the waves of the sacred river Alf, okay, where was heard the mingled measure from the fountain and the caves. You see, the dome of pleasure is casting its shadow on the outside world. This place which Kubla created comprised in it all contradictions in a strange manner, as if they are reconciled. So it's really something really strange. How can all these different contradictory things be in the same place? It was a miracle of rare device. Here, when he said it was a miracle, he is referring to the dome of pleasure. The dome of pleasure it was something like a miracle. You can't find such a thing at any place. It is rare, something that you just meet in your dreams. why it is so rare, or what makes it a miracle? Because we have a sunny pleasure dome with caves of ice. How can you have sunny place and you have caves of ice at the same time? So here the dome of pleasure represents this reconciliation of the contradictions, of the opposites. And here it seems our poet is able actually to represent this reconciliation in a very good way. Now we see here this last stanza that, if you remember from the questions that I have given you, I asked you why the last stanza seems or looks different from the rest of the poem, and most of you answered because it was added later, which explains the difference in rhyme and style. The reason is that Coleridge was interrupted in the middle of this in the middle of his writing, so he could not complete the rest of the poem. So there is a reason for that, because he was trying to remember what he has seen in the dream as he was writing, but suddenly someone knocked on the door as he was writing. When he goes to open the door and come back, he couldn't remember anything from the rest of the dream. But here we have something to notice in this stanza. What did he see? He saw a damsel. Damsel means a lady. And this lady had a dulcimer. Dulcimer is a musical instrument. In Arabic, we call it al-qanun, something similar to al-oud. It's a beautiful oriental instrument. And you see here we are talking about oriental landscape. So maybe the poet has seen something oriental. And you remember we said romantics were somehow fascinated and they like to go to very far away places like the Orient. In a vision once I saw. So maybe he tried to remember something else, or maybe some other dream. It was an Abyssinian maid. Abyssinian comes from Abyssinia, which means Al-Habash in Arabic. So this lady is, perhaps she's black. And on her dulcimer she played singing of Mount Abora. So she was playing on this dulcimer some kind of song. Could I revive within me her symphony and song? You see here, he laments his inability to remember. You see, this is the problem of our poet. He was not able to remember the rest of the dream in order to write it down in the poem. So what could he do in order to continue writing? Here comes the role of imagination. Here we see that our poet is going to show the power of imagination. And this is, he says, to such a deep delight it would win me. He would be very happy if he could remember that with the music loud and long. I would build that dome in air. You see, sometimes when we say that a person is really imaginative, what do we say? We say that we say that he draws things in air. It means that he uses his imagination. So whenever we see this expression in air, it means that the poet is going to depend on the power of his imagination to create his poetry. This is the only thing that the poet has as a power in his hands. That sunny dome, those caves of ice, and all who heard should see them there. And now we come to the last part of the poem, and all should cry, beware, beware. So here, let me put this one here for you. Here the character of the poet merges with the character of the poet. Both are manipulators. What do you mean by manipulators? Here we know that Kubla Khan created the pleasure dome. When you look at the pleasure dome with all the different things, all the different beautiful things that you find in this dome, actually it attracts our attention to the idea of maybe some kind of paradise. You see, it seems here that Kubla Khan has created something that we can't find in wild nature. You see, nature in reality is not only it has beautiful places and landscapes, it also has another face which is very harsh, very rough, aggressive sometimes. very strong. You see, we can see that, for example, in storms, in natural disasters, in earthquakes. So nature is not all the time beautiful and nurturing and guiding and teaching man, just like Wordsworth used to mention in his poems. Here in this poem, we see that Coleridge is showing us that nature could have another face, which is really, really aggressive and really fearful and dangerous. So what Kubla did is trying to create a man-made nature, something like paradise on earth. He was trying to create something to manipulate nature. Instead of having all these things in nature which are wild and real, he tried to create something else, something which is more, let's say, unrealistic. You see, it is unrealistic, manipulative. He manipulated the physical world, the nature, the wild nature, and created something more human. The same here in this last section, we see that the character, you see, the character of the poet merges with the character of the poet. Sorry, the character of here I have to correct this one. The character of Kubla merges with the character of the poet, which means what? It means that both share this manipulation. Both are manipulators. Kubla is a person who manipulates nature, while the poet manipulates through words and fancy. The power that the poet has is his ability through imagination, through words, to manipulate ideas, images, in order to create a certain feeling or a certain reaction from the audience or from the readers. You see, so here he mentions in the end some kind of strange ceremony. His floating hair weave a circle round him thrice. Here we don't actually understand who's this character that he refers to. That's why here I told you that we have this merge between two characters. We don't know if he is talking about himself or the character of Kubla. That's why we assume that he is trying to merge two characters at the same time. For he on honeydew hath fed and drunk the milk of paradise. You see, so here in the end of the poem, we see that our speaker was trying as much as he can to remember anything about this dome. So we can come up with certain themes: man and nature. The speaker's admiration of the wonders of nature is present in this poem. Yet, what is striking and somewhat different about the portrayal of nature is the depiction of dangerous and threatening aspects of nature. Unlike Wordsworth, who presented nature as teaching and guiding man, nature here is rough and dangerous, that can only be tamed by a male explorer like Kubla Khan. This could be a possible theme. Another one is the poetic creativity. Throughout history, many artists have also spoken of having visions or dreams, or being caught up in trances in which their creative imaginations were freed of inhibitions, and their best creative work was possible. So what makes a poet creative, or what is the source of the poet's creativity? Is it imagination, something from his own, let's say, imagination, or something outside, just like Coleridge, who was, we can assume that he was mainly influenced by opium, the drug that he has taken before falling asleep and having this dream and then writing this poem. So could you possibly think of any other themes? I don't know. This is up to you. And thank you for listening. If you have any questions, if you need anything to be clarified to, you can ask me at any time. Thank you so much.